The conversation that changed everything started in the most ordinary way. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was standing in my tiny kitchen, stirring a pot of soup. My phone buzzed on the counter, and I glanced at the screen. Mom calling. I sighed. Mom's calls were rarely casual. Still, I wiped my hands on a towel and answered. "Hi, Mom." "Oh, good. You're home." She sounded a little too chipper, which instantly put me on edge. "Listen, sweetheart. Your father and I need to talk to you about something important." "Okay," I said cautiously, ladling soup into a bowl. "What's up?" "It's about Jessica," she said, and I could hear the shift in her tone. The one she used when trying to soften a blow. "You know how hard she's been working on her art career." "Uh-huh," I said, already dreading where this was going. "Well, she's been accepted into a prestigious artist residency in Paris," Mom continued. "It's an incredible opportunity. But the thing is, she needs some financial help." The spoon in my hand clattered against the pot. "And you're telling me this because?" There was a long pause, and then Mom's voice became gentle, almost apologetic. "We used your wedding fund to help her secure the spot." For a moment I thought I'd misheard. "What? Emily, you're not even engaged yet," Mom said quickly, as if that made it better. "We thought we could help her now and figure something out for you later." I set the bowl down on the counter with a force that splashed soup over the edge. "You thought you could figure it out later? That was my money. I've been saving for years, and you promised to match it. How could you just—" "She needed it more," Mom interrupted, her tone firm but weary. "This is her dream, Emily. It's a once-in-a-lifetime chance." "And my dreams don't matter?" I snapped. "Emily, you'll get married eventually," Mom said, as if that was supposed to reassure me. "Jessica, I don't want to hear it," I said, cutting her off. "You've made your choice, and now you'll have to live with it." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were trembling, and I had to set my phone down to avoid throwing it across the room. For the rest of the day, I tried to distract myself, but the anger simmered just below the surface. It wasn't just about the money, it was about everything. Jessica had always been the favorite. She was the talented, vibrant twin, while I was the practical one, the reliable one, the one who didn't need special attention. When Aaron, my boyfriend of 3 years, came home that evening, he immediately noticed something was wrong. "Hey," he said, setting down his bag. "What's going on?" I told him everything, pacing the length of our tiny living room as I vented. By the time I finished, my voice was hoarse, and Aaron was sitting on the couch, looking both sympathetic and incredulous. "They really spent your wedding fund on Jessica?" he asked. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "And they don't even see what's wrong with that." Aaron stood and pulled me into a hug. "I'm so sorry, Em. You don't deserve this." "I'm done with them," I said, my voice muffled against his shoulder. "I can't keep pretending everything's fine when they treat me like I'm invisible." Aaron didn't argue. He just held me tighter. The next few weeks were quiet. I stopped answering my parents' calls and ignored Jessica's texts, which alternated between cheerful updates about Paris and vague, guilt-laden inquiries about why I wasn't responding. Aaron and I focused on our life together, and for the first time I felt a sense of clarity. But the calm didn't last. One evening, I came home from work to find a voicemail from Jessica. Her voice was shaky, a far cry from her usual confident tone. "Emily, it's me. I really need to talk to you. Please call me back. It's important." I debated ignoring it, but something in her voice stopped me. With a sigh, I dialed her number. She answered on the first ring. "Emily, thank God. I didn't think you'd call." "What's going on?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. There was a long pause, and then Jessica's voice broke. "I'm in trouble." I sat down on the edge of the couch. "What kind of trouble?" I messed up," she admitted, her words tumbling out in a rush. "I got involved with this gallery in Paris. They were promising big commissions, but it turns out it was a scam. They were selling counterfeit art, and now I'm caught up in it. The police are investigating, and I don't know what to do." I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, disbelief, a flicker of concern. So what are you saying, Jess? That you need me to fix this? No, she said quickly. I need advice. Mom and Dad are freaking out, and I don't know who else to turn to. Her words stung more than I cared to admit. She didn't turn to me because she trusted me. She turned to me because she had no one else. Look, Jessica, I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. I don't know how to help you. Maybe this is something you need to figure out on your own. Emily, please, she whispered, her voice cracking. I hesitated, torn between the desire to let her face the consequences and the nagging sense of responsibility I couldn't shake. I'll think about it, I said finally, and hung up before she could say more. For the next few days I wrestled with my decision. Aaron tried to help, but even he seemed unsure of what the right choice was. She's your sister, he said one night as we lay in bed. But that doesn't mean you owe her everything. I know, I murmured, staring at the ceiling. But it's not that simple. When I finally called Jessica back, it was with a heavy heart and a carefully drawn line. I'll help you, I told her. But only if you're willing to take responsibility for what you've done. No excuses. No blaming anyone else. I will, she promised, her voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to believe her, but deep down I wasn't sure I could. Jessica and I agreed to meet at a cafe near the courthouse. When I arrived, she was already there, fidgeting with a cup of coffee that looked untouched. She had always been the picture of effortless composure, but now she looked worn, dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a loose, unkempt ponytail. When she saw me, her face crumpled with relief. Emily, she said, standing up quickly. Thank you for coming. I sat down without returning her hug. Let's just get to it. What's going on? She flinched but nodded, sitting back down and wrapping her hands around the mug. The gallery, it wasn't what I thought it was. They claimed they were representing up-and-coming artists, but it was all a front. They were forging paintings, using the artists' names to sell them for insane prices. And you didn't know? I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. At first, I didn't, she said, her voice cracking. They made it sound so legitimate. I thought I was finally making it, you know? But when I realized what was happening, I didn't know how to back out. They threatened me, said they'd ruin my career, ruin me if I tried to leave. I leaned back, crossing my arms. And now you're under investigation? She nodded, tears spilling over. They're saying I knew all along, that I was complicit. I swear I wasn't, Emily. I didn't want any of this. For a moment I just watched her. Part of me wanted to believe her, to see her as the sister I'd once idolized. But another part of me remembered every time she had lied, manipulated, or taken advantage of our parents' blind loyalty. What do you want from me? I asked finally. I need help paying for a lawyer, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Of course you do. Because Mom and Dad drained my wedding fund to get you to Paris, and now that's not enough. Her face turned red, whether from shame or frustration, I couldn't tell. Emily, I know I don't deserve your help, but I don't have anyone else. The words hit harder than they should have. Why me, Jess? Why not Mom and Dad? They're already stretched thin, she admitted. They sold the car, put a lien on the house. They're doing everything they can. I sat there, the silence between us heavy. I'll help you, I said finally, watching as her face lit up with hope. But not with money. I'll help you find a lawyer. A good one who doesn't cost a fortune. And that's it. Do you understand? She nodded quickly, her relief palpable. Thank you, Emily. Really. Thank you. Over the next few days, I threw myself into research. I scoured reviews, called contacts, and eventually found a lawyer who specialized in cases like Jessica's. He wasn't cheap, but he agreed to work with Jessica on a payment plan. When I introduced them, Jessica was cautious, but the lawyer, a no-nonsense man named Grant, didn't give her much room for doubt. I'll do my best to clear your name, he said, his tone firm. But I need you to be completely honest with me. No omissions, no half-truths. If I find out you've lied, This is over. Do you understand? Jessica nodded, her eyes wide. Grant turned to me. Are you footing the bill for this? No, I said firmly. She is. Jessica shot me a look but didn't argue. As the weeks passed, I kept my distance. I didn't attend the meetings with Grant or go to court hearings. The emotional distance felt like armor, a way to protect myself from falling back into old patterns of being her safety net. But staying away didn't mean I wasn't affected. Every time my phone buzzed with an update from Jessica or Grant, my stomach twisted with a mix of anxiety and dread. I wanted to believe she was finally taking responsibility, but the years of favoritism and betrayal made it hard to let my guard down. Then, one evening, my parents showed up unannounced. I opened the door to find them on my porch, their expressions a mixture of weariness and determination. Mom was clutching a casserole dish, her go-to offering whenever she wanted to smooth things over. "Emily, sweetheart," she began, her voice overly cheerful. "We thought we'd stop by for dinner." I stepped aside reluctantly, letting them in. Erin was working late, which meant I had to face this ambush alone. Mom set the casserole on the kitchen counter while Dad lingered awkwardly in the living room. "How's Jessica doing?" Mom asked, her tone casual but probing. "She's managing," I said, keeping my answer short. "That's good," Mom said, glancing at Dad. "We were thinking maybe you could." "No," I said firmly, cutting her off. "You don't even know what we were going to say," Dad said, frowning. "You were going to ask me for money?" I said, crossing my arms. "And the answer is no." Mom's face fell. "Emily, she's your sister. She's in trouble. We're a family." "She's been in trouble before," I snapped. "And every time you've bailed her out. I'm not doing it this time." "Emily," Dad began, his tone sharp. "No," I said again, my voice rising. "You made your choice when you gave her my wedding fund. Now you can deal with the consequences." Mom's eyes filled with tears, and Dad's face hardened. "You're being selfish," he said. "Selfish?" I laughed bitterly. "You've spent my entire life putting Jessica first. And now, when I finally draw a boundary, I'm selfish." Mom reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I know we've made mistakes, but we're just trying to keep this family together." "No, Mom," I said, my voice trembling. "You're trying to keep Jessica's life from falling apart. That's not the same thing." They left shortly after, the casserole untouched. As I closed the door behind them, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. The next day, Jessica called me. "Mom told me what happened," she said. "Good," I said. "Then you know I'm not budging." There was a long pause, and then she said, "You're right." The admission stunned me into silence. "I've spent my whole life expecting people to fix my mistakes," she continued. "And it's not fair. To you, to Mom and Dad, to anyone." "Jessica," I began, unsure of what to say. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know if I can ever make it up to you, but I'm going to try." For the first time, I felt the faintest glimmer of hope. "I hope you mean that," I said quietly. "I do," she said. "I swear." As I hung up, I realized I wanted to believe her, but belief would take time and trust even longer. The day of Jessica's trial finally arrived. I didn't go. It wasn't out of indifference, though I tried to convince myself it was. The truth was, I couldn't handle the thought of sitting in that courtroom, hearing the details of what she'd done, or worse, hearing her try to justify it. Instead, I stayed home, pacing the living room and glancing at my phone every few minutes. When Grant finally called in the late afternoon, my hands were trembling as I answered. "It's done," he said, his voice calm. "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "She took the deal," he replied. "Probation for 3 years, 300 hours of community service, and a mandatory restitution payment. No jail time." I let out a shaky breath, relief mixing with unease. "And she's okay?" "As okay as someone in her position can be," Grant said. "She's lucky, Emily. Could have been much worse." "Yeah," I said, my throat tight. Thanks for letting me know. When I hung up, I sank onto the couch, staring at the floor. It was over, at least legally. But the mess Jessica had made, of her life, of our family, was far from resolved. Later that evening, Jessica called. Her voice was subdued, nothing like the confident tone I'd grown up hearing. "Emily," she began, "thank you for everything. I didn't do it for you," I said quickly, but without malice. "I did it because someone had to, and because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't at least try to help." "I know," she said quietly, "and I'm grateful. I really am." There was a long pause, and then she added, "I'm moving back home for a while. Mom and Dad want me to stay with them until I get back on my feet." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just murmured, "Okay, Emily," she said hesitantly. "I hope someday we can, be close again." I closed my eyes, the weight of her words pressing down on me. "We'll see," I said honestly. For the next several months, things were quiet. Jessica stayed with my parents, who seemed to have shifted their focus from idolizing her to managing her recovery. Occasionally, I got updates, mostly through Mom, but I kept my distance. In the meantime, Aaron and I got married in a small, beautiful ceremony at a local garden. There were no over-the-top decorations or massive guest lists, just the people we loved most. My parents came, but Jessica didn't. I told myself I didn't mind, but a small part of me had hoped she'd find a way to show up. After the wedding, life moved on. Aaron and I settled into married life, and I began to feel a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. I thought about Jessica less and less, and when I did, it was with a sense of detachment rather than anger. One day, about a year after the trial, a package arrived in the mail. The handwriting on the envelope was unmistakably Jessica's. I hesitated before opening it, unsure if I wanted to see what was inside. Finally, curiosity got the better of me, and I tore it open. Inside was a small canvas, carefully wrapped in tissue paper. When I unwrapped it, I found a painting of two women standing side by side on a beach, their silhouettes dark against the setting sun. The scene was peaceful, almost wistful, and I felt a lump rise in my throat. Tucked into the package was a note. "Emily, this painting isn't just a gift. It's a promise. I'm working on myself one day at a time. I know I can't undo the hurt I've caused, but I hope I can show you that I'm trying to be better. You don't have to forgive me, but I hope someday you'll let me back into your life. Love, Jessica." I stared at the note for a long time, emotions swirling. Part of me wanted to call her, to tell her I was proud of her for taking responsibility and trying to change. Another part of me wasn't ready. I hung the painting in my home office right above my desk. It was a reminder, not just of Jessica, but of everything I'd been through and everything I'd overcome. Over the months that followed, Jessica and I exchanged occasional texts. They were brief, cautious, and mostly surface level, but it was a start. I didn't know if we'd ever be close again, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like it was possible. And that was enough for now. Love a story with unexpected turns? Like this video and check out our channel for more drama-filled journeys.